As you know from the show, I've worried for a long time about the explosion in the number of children suddenly saying, I'm transgender. And then not just getting attention, which some seem to need, but given drugs, of course, only too quickly to suppress their puberty. Later, even surgery to supposedly change their gender. Now, we've had experts here on the show from Australia and Britain saying, and America, this has been done without proper science to back it up. And now researchers commissioned by Britain's Cass Review into transgender care say Australia's guidelines on all this, on this transition business, lack rigour and independence. And they say they fail, the people doing all this, fail to recommend formal assessments that screen these children first for things like autism or sexual orientation or other possible explanations for them thinking they're in the wrong body. But so few politicians there call for action to defend what are often very vulnerable children, to defend them from being encouraged into transgender care they may not actually need and they could regret for the rest of their lives. But in South Australia, one politician is taking a stand. She's One Nation's Sarah Game, who joins me now. Sarah, good to see you again. What are you up to?
Thank you so much, Andrew. Well, what I've done is today actually introduce into Parliament a piece of legislation that would remove the teaching of gender fluidity in the curriculum and restore all matters of moral and ethical teaching back to parents. I mean, Andrew, parents have never put their hands up and said, look, we can't do this, we want government to take over. Most parents are loving parents, and I believe that parents should be in charge of the morals and ethical teaching of their children, and that includes this issue of gender fluidity, for which there is no evidence for.
Now, what prompted you to do this?
Well, look, Andrew, I mean, firstly, I'm a mum. I've got 3 kids. And so, as you mentioned, it is about actually preserving the well-being of our young people. But also, since I've been in politics over the last couple of years, I've listened to my constituents. And I would say this is not a right-wing view. This is a responsible view. The vast, vast majority of people, certainly here in South Australia, they have communicated they want the removal of gender fluidity teaching within the curriculum. And certainly I've had many conversations confidentially with principals who are also very concerned about what's being taught in the school curriculum.
Well, what is being taught?
Well, I can tell you here, Andrew, that it's a standard part of the Year 7 curriculum to teach all children about the gender unicorn or the genderbread man, where children are asked to consider whether their biology matches how they feel in their heart and in their brain. And I would say we shouldn't be bringing this to the attention of our young people. Schools are there to encourage and aspiration and engender ambition in our young people. And I really believe that all matters of morals and ethics need to be run by parents. And that's exactly what this piece of legislation does. Nothing of a moral or ethical nature would be presented to children without that content first being approved by the parents, by the primary caregivers. And there would be no teaching of gender fluidity because we need a curriculum based on evidence.
But what do you make of the argument that someone would say, well, look, you know, there'd be children in real psychological pain, you know, whether they think maybe they're gay or they're lesbian or, in fact, transgender. Their parents don't understand. Their parents are really closed-minded, and this is a way to help the kids, you know, make up their own mind or whatever. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I think the primary concern here really is that when we have a child in distress, parents, I mean, the vast, vast majority of parents are loving parents. They need that connection with their children. And when you have a child who is suffering or in some sort of mental anguish, I think without some evidence to the contrary, that parent is not responsible, it really needs to be back to the parents to say, look, this is how we need to manage my child at the moment, because What I'm concerned about and what I'm hearing is family breakdown and friction within families, because schools are able to take control and schools are able to exclude parents from these conversations. And I think that's a very dangerous thing.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because there's been research from Britain. We've talked to a BBC journalist who's done a whole book on this, suggesting sometimes that it is family breakdown or absence or some sort of family trauma that tends to be linked, in some cases, certainly not all, to people thinking, I need to change gender. I don't know whether it's a cry for attention or love or whatever, I don't know. But that's an interesting link. Finally, what support do you have for what you're doing in Parliament?
Well, certainly there's an enormous amount of community support. When I first started talking about the removal of gender fluidity from the curriculum and putting all matters of morals and ethics back with parents or primary caregivers, there was a poll in the Advertiser actually on this proposal that I had, and it achieved 80 to 90% of people in agreement. And that's why I say it's not a right-wing view, it's a majority view, it's a responsible view. And so certainly within the community, there's a lot of support. Within Parliament, I believe that the Liberal Party are very open-minded to supporting this piece of legislation. And I also believe there will be some support from the crossbench. Unfortunately, when you have a Labor government and you have the level of Greens presence that we have here, it's unlikely to get through, but it's still worth putting up and it's still worth applying pressure to the Parliament.
Look, raising the debate is only the first step, and if you don't do that, you'll get nowhere anyway. So good on you for doing that. Sarah Game, thank you so much for your time.